Welcome to the Hello Sunday podcast with me, Nikki Hayden. This is the podcast that discusses everything self-development, spirituality and sobriety. And it wouldn't be me without a little sprinkling of humour. Whether you are just starting out on your journey of self-development or have been exploring these topics for years, are completely alcohol-free or just curious about living a more sober lifestyle, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be exploring topics in both solo episodes and with some amazing guest experts. So if you like what you hear, then please subscribe, rate and review. So with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Hello Sunday. Hope you're all doing so good. Hope you've all had a great week. I haven't really been doing that much lately. I'm not going to lie. I was thinking just before I started recording, what have I been up to? And in all honesty, not that much this year. Post Thailand and coming back from our gorgeous holiday, the start of the year, we haven't been doing a lot. We've been very much in, I guess, kind of like hustle mode. I don't really subscribe to hustle culture, but I guess that's the only way that I can describe it, really. We've just been heads down, getting shit done in business, in fitness, in our personal lives. And when I say we, I mean my husband and I. And there hasn't been a huge amount of like life stuff, personal updates, anything like that to report. It's just been quite samey. But I think sometimes that's just the way that it has to be. You know, you just have to put in the work and grind. And actually that is very fitting with this week's topic. Although in saying that, I haven't had many kind of social fun times. Yesterday, as you're listening to this on Sunday the 3rd, yesterday was the first day of the year that we were doing something with our group of friends. It's my friend Anna's 40th, so it was the week just gone. So we were celebrating this weekend because she was away. So we had a gorgeous lunch. So I'm hoping that went really well and we had a really nice time and enjoyed catching up with everybody and seeing all our friends. So, but yeah, other than that, we haven't been doing a huge amount. And I think it is just that season of our life, but also fitting in with the seasons of the year and the downtime and the hibernation that nature goes through, and therefore that we as humans also need to go through before it comes to the spring, which spring equinox is on the 20th of March. So not long at all to go, only just under 3 weeks until it's officially spring. And that is the time when you would normally have lots of outward energy, social plans. You kind of come alive, don't you? And I think that's really important. You know, if you're still feeling very much like you're not on that, energetic hype, it's totally normal. And actually going through winter and like November and December with all of the parties and the social stuff and the outward energy, it's really going against the grain of nature. So no wonder people get into January and feel run down and burned out and like they just want to have some time off. So we took some time off post-Christmas, and since we got back, we really have just been in, heads down mode. And I think this is something that I wouldn't say I don't tend to do it every year. I do definitely go for it, you know, in January and February. It's like I say, I work in recruitment for my day job, so that isn't really optional, so to speak. But I think this year it's definitely been a bit more because, as I've mentioned before, I've committed to accountability and coaching in two major areas of my life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what it's really got me kind of noticing and focusing on recently is when I'm talking to people about like the changes that I've made and the commitments that I've made to myself and the way that I've up-leveled certain areas of my life, there's a group of people that will say, oh my God, that's amazing. Good for you. I can't wait to see the results. And then there's another group of people that are almost tired at the thought of the work and the energy, and I guess they just make comments like, oh, I don't know how you do that, or oh, I'd love to be able to have the energy that you've got, or I'd love to be able to commit to that fitness regime or to own a business. And I think what I really want to say this week is no one is coming to save you. Nobody is going to do this for you. Nobody is going to change your life or create and build the habits that you need in order to be able to create that life for yourself. Nobody but you is going to be able to do that. And so when people say things like, oh, I could never, or I don't know how you do X, Y, or Z, or oh my gosh, I wish that I could do that, what they're really saying is, I don't have the knowledge or tools to do that, or I don't have the willpower, commitment, and determination to do that, which in essence means that it's not important enough to you. I think for me, there's definitely areas of my life, and I think I mentioned this on another episode previously, but for instance, fitness for me last year was on my goals list. It was something that I really wanted to invest in. I didn't quite, put it this way, I massively underestimated how much work it would take to get my business off the ground and to be a first-year business owner. And so by 6 months into the year, that fitness goal was 100% not a priority for me. Like, it just wasn't. And I was fine with that. I was absolutely cool with that, because to me, I would rather put all my energies and efforts into that one thing that I knew everything else was dependent on, and that was the business working, for me to then be able to refocus and relook at other goals this year, which is what I've done. So it's fine if it's not a priority. It's fine if it's not something that you are really that determined to make happen. Like, that is absolutely fine. But if you've got a longing for something, if you've got a burning desire, you really want to be able to do something, then nobody is going to be able to make that happen but you. And I think sometimes people wait for the right time. They wait for a relationship to come along, or they wait for them to, I don't know, lose weight, or, you know, for instance, I'll hear people say things like, oh, well, I'll go traveling when I've met someone who I can go with, or I'll visit that country when I've got a partner to share it with, or, oh, I'll definitely invest in that gorgeous outfit that I want when I've lost some weight. And that's all well and good, but for those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3 month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. If you're not taking steps to make those things happen, then it's just a pipe dream. It's just a hope and a dream. It's not actually something that is going to happen in the future. It's just something that you're hoping will happen. I read a quote the other day. I've been trying to find it ever since. I can't find it. But I wrote it down at the time, and it says, "The problem with the future is that it keeps turning into the present." And how true is that? How many times have you said, "Oh, I really want to do this one day," or, "Oh, I'll definitely do that in the future." And then it gets to the future and you've made absolutely zero steps towards what it is that you want to do, or what it is that you were hoping that one day would happen. And one day just keeps getting pushed further and further and further away. Now, if you really want to make something happen in the future, you have to start taking steps today. And yes, you can have support around you. I've got the most incredible support systems. I spoke about this, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, when I spoke about having your inner circle and choosing your front row. I've got incredible support. I've got support in every single area of my life, and it all looks like super different. Some people support me in all areas, but I've got business coaching groups and fitness coaching groups and sobriety groups, and they are all absolutely incredible. And I'm so lucky to have those people. But I went and I sought them out. I looked for support in the areas that I wanted it. And whilst they are absolutely amazing at cheerleading me and keeping me accountable, they're not going to do the work for me. None of them are as bothered as I am about my life being a success. None of them are as bothered as I am about my sobriety journey or my business. They're incredible people and they support me no end, but none of them care as much as I do about my life. And that is the be all and end all, really. You might have a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner who is so invested in your life because you're a team. But equally, they will be more invested in their own goals and their own hopes and their own dreams. And so, yes, they'll be there to help you through the tough times and celebrate the highs with you, but they ain't doing the work for you. And this is really what I have come to learn. So I've got a couple of examples of this. The first is, it's quite a small, silly thing, but what I will say is it really does highlight just how long it takes us to learn these lessons sometimes. I wish I knew this when I was in my 20s, as opposed to being in my 30s and really looking back in hindsight and knowing that whilst I've always been quite a determined and proactive person, I was definitely far too over-reliant on other people doing things for me. So when my husband and I moved into our house just over 3 years ago now, so it was 2021, January 2021. And in the November of that year, there was a really bad storm. And it was snowing outside at the time, and the winds were horrendous. And I remember that night going to bed and saying to my husband, "Oh, do you think our fences will be okay? Because we are on a corner house, we're surrounded by fences. Like, I mean, we must have probably 30 panels, something like that." And I'd never owned property with a garden before. The previous property that I owned in Birmingham was a flat, and it was a masonette, so it was above another flat, super protected. The weather never affected it. So I went to bed, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what fences are for. Like, of course they'll be fine." Anybody that knows us personally knows this story. We got up the next morning, the entire garden, so we've got two side gardens, and they've got a big like perimeter around the perimeter is fences, so they're joined by fences. So the fences go from one side of the house all the way around the back to the other. And the one garden, pretty much all of the fence panels had been blown down. Not just blown down, but absolutely destroyed. It had blown down a huge like clematis plant that was growing up a fence. And we basically looked out into our garden that morning, and it looked like something out of a like hurricane movie. It was ridiculous. And we went outside and we put on our, gloves and coats and everything, and we were trying to lift these fence panels back. And then we realised that they were like broken, and it was just an absolute mess. And we just looked at each other like a deer in headlights. We didn't have a clue what to do. I remember thinking, this is the first time that I had been in a situation where nobody could just come and help us. We had to deal with this ourselves. It was the first time that I'd been in a situation where I didn't live 5 minutes down the road from my parents. And my husband had rented previously. He'd never owned a home, so he would have just called his landlord. So we looked at each other and we were like, oh my gosh, and it was still storming outside. It was still such bad weather. I remember we came in and we just kept going to the window and looking at our poor garden. It seems so trivial and so silly looking back, but it was only a few months after we'd bought the house. And I think prior to that, loads of other things had happened, like just silly stuff, but things that we'd had to like fix and renovate and find people to come and sort for us. It just made me realise what a huge responsibility home ownership was. And obviously, in the end, I found somebody who was an expert in fencing. And as soon as the weather cleared up, a couple of weeks later, he came and fitted a whole new like fencing panel, took away all the old stuff, and it was fine. But in that moment, I remember thinking, no one is coming to sort this for us. Nobody is coming to fix this, or we didn't know any of our neighbours. We still don't really, actually. It's a lot of elderly people in bungalows, so yeah, we don't like have anybody really close to us that we speak to. So it was literally me and my husband, and it was like the blind leading the blind. And that will always stick with me. And it just highlighted that you just have to dig deep sometimes, do the work yourself and put in the effort. And that is, now I look back and I think, what a silly thing to be so upset about. But because I'd been so used to, I guess, having my parents as that like ledge that I held on to, they were always there. They were always just down the road. And suddenly they were 2 hours away. And it wasn't that I could just get them to come round and tell me what to do. And then more recently in my business, I have been going through an upgrade of all my technology. It's got to a point where I've needed to upgrade from the actual basics that were done on a shoestring when I first launched. And now I've got the money to invest into decent technology stacks and automation tools that are going to make things easier. And obviously being in my business accountability group, there's tons of super tech savvy people who have been giving me loads of advice about which CRM system to use and which automation tool and how to integrate them. And whilst I would say I'm quite tech savvy and I'm not adverse to, I love learning about how to do stuff. Like, for instance, great example, this podcast, I didn't have a clue how to do a podcast. I Googled it, watched YouTubes and learned how to record, edit and upload onto a hosting platform all by myself. I still haven't nailed the social media side, but baby steps. But all of this technology stuff is so far out of my comfort zone. But there's me in my business, right? There's only me. So I had to sort a way through and source people to give me the right advice and to help to understand how to migrate all of my data over, which I did all by myself. I've had to go through this really sticky, challenging, just really difficult period. Whilst I feel like I'm pushing water up a hill, I've had to just go through it myself because I didn't have an IT team. I don't have people that I can just hand this over to. So I have now sourced some people that have been helping me with the data entry side and helping me with understanding how integration works. But you just sometimes have to suck it up and roll up your sleeves and do the work. And if you want it enough, then you'll do it. Like, that was something that I knew was going to make my business run so much more smoothly and efficiently. And so the end goal was absolutely going to be worth all of the challenge and stickiness and going to bed feeling like my brain was just an absolute storm and hurricane inside it with all this information whirling round. But there is nobody else to come and help with that. I had to get the steps and the roadmap in place to do it. I think a really good way of understanding, what are the things that I need to do. There will be things that when I ask you this question will come to mind. What are the things that you know you need to be doing, but you're not doing? What are they? What are those things that deep down, you know that you've got to roll your sleeves up and just suck it up and do for the end goal? But if you don't know what those things are, then there's a really good exercise that you can do, I guess, just to kind of uncover the disconnect between where you are now and where you want to be. And so you can put those action steps in place. So write a list down of all of your values. If you do 2 columns on a sheet of paper or a journal or whatever it is that you use to collect your thoughts, write on one side in the left-hand column all of your values that you want your life to be based around. So things like you might really value family and time with your family. You might really value nature and being outside. You might really value freedom, and that can mean so many things. Freedom could mean financial freedom. It could mean time freedom. So I have friends that work part-time. They're not on phenomenal salaries, but they value that freedom and that time with their family so much that they've dropped from full-time to part-time hours so that they can live that value. And it might not always be that way, but that is something that they have chosen to do in order to be able to bring that value and live that value within their life. And is one of your values health, for instance? Do you really value feeling strong and healthy and living a really, clean, healthy life and a focus on your well-being? So write down your values. And then on the other side of the piece of paper, the other column, write down the things that you are doing that go against those values. So it could be that you've said that you value family, but actually you've not seen your family in weeks. You've booked every weekend with friends or with work, and actually you haven't spent any time with the people that you say one of your biggest values centers around. Is one of your values being outside in nature and spending time outdoors, but you spend 2 hours in the evening scrolling on social media? Is one of your values health, but actually you don't ever go and work out or walk outside, and instead you are binging Netflix every night with your dinner in front of the TV? So what are the areas that you know you need to make amends in or make a change in? Where is the disconnect there? And this isn't to judge you. Don't judge yourself on this. We all do this. I have been in a scroll hole plenty of times over the last few months. And there's a lot of times where I've thought, I really should have done more steps today, but my head's been buried in my laptop. And yet 2 of my values are time in nature and health and fitness. So look at where the disconnects are, and then look at the areas that you do genuinely really value, and look at what it is that you think that you need to do and put in place to just really take some of that disconnect away. It can be as simple as having your morning coffee outside for 10 minutes. Now the weather's getting nicer, you might be able to sit outside for 10 minutes in the morning, and therefore you're valuing nature and being outside, but it's not eating up. I'm not asking you to do a walk for an hour in your lunch. There are times when that just won't be possible, or where you feel that you should be doing that, but actually it doesn't need to be such a huge change. So just have a look at the disconnect between those 2 sides, and it will quickly become clear to you where you need to make these changes. Now, as I said earlier, one of the values in my life is health and fitness and wellness. Last year, I didn't shelve it. I was still going outside. I was doing my morning walks. I was getting outside at lunchtime where I could. I wasn't being unhealthy with things like my food. And I obviously spent a huge proportion of the year sober as well. But when it came to fitness, that took a massive backseat. My, kind of fitness activity of choice is lifting weights. I really enjoy it. I like being in competition with myself. I feel like I can consistently achieve when I'm lifting, because it's pushing yourself to do that little bit more and lift that little bit heavier. So I really enjoy that. But I didn't do that from July until December last year. So this year I decided to make a really concerted effort, and rather than just telling myself, hey, let's go back to the gym, and knowing that in the first probably 2 weeks of the year, 2 weeks of my year, because the first 2 weeks of the year we were out of the country. The first 2 weeks, I knew that I would have sacked it all in, because work was busy. I have been working long hours, and it wasn't something that I felt like I would prioritize and keep myself accountable with. So I invested in an online coach. And that for me was knowing and putting into practice the knowledge of no one is going to do this for me. If I want to finish 2024 feeling fit and strong and being proud of the body that I'm in and that I've worked for, then I had to do something about that. I had to be the person to take that step, because as nice as it is to look at fitness models, Instagrams, and to long after the strength and the tone and the agility that they have, it's not doing anything to get me to that place, is it? And this is the thing. It's all very well listening to podcasts and reading books and scrolling through social media accounts that inspire you, but it's not going to get you any closer to your goal. It might give you the inspiration, but essentially it's the action that is going to get you there. And a huge part of manifestation is the action. You have to take action towards your goals. And so that's what I decided to do in 2 areas of my life, in fitness and in business. That's what I decided to do this year, because I knew that if I didn't, I'd be finishing this year the same way that I finished last year. And that would be knowing that I'd let things go and not focused on them when I could have done, when I had the time and the attention. So for me, the action is already happening, but I'm having to kind of level up every time I get to a new level. So as soon as I'm hitting a goal, or I'm getting to a point where I'm like, yeah, okay, that's good. So we'll give the example of the gym. Like, now that I'm kind of lost the holiday and Christmas fluff, as I like to call it, and I can see some shape coming back, it'd be really easy for me to be like, okay, great, yeah, I've done that. I'm not going to, because I really love the gym again now, and it's now part of my lifestyle. But it would be really easy to just be like falling back into old patterns. But then I'd be sat here this time next year and nobody would have come to save me. Nobody would have come to do the work. So I'm sticking with it, and I'm leveling up every time I hit the level that I wanted to get to. So the first goal was get rid of the fluff, start seeing tone. The next goal is going to be based on actual like lifting weights and knowing that I'm getting stronger, and the PBs, the personal best of what I can do within that gym scenario. And the same with business. I've got goals throughout the year, but once I've hit the first ones, I'm not going to sit back and think, okay, great, well, obviously I can do that now. I'm going to invest more. I'm going to step up more. I'm going to surround myself with people that have been there and have done it, so that they can inspire me and support me and share their knowledge and share their wisdom. It's easy, I think, when you're starting to do this work to compare yourself. And actually, whilst comparison is in essence not a great tool, it's not a great I wouldn't use comparison a lot to focus on other people, because it's not healthy, because everyone has a different set of tools. Everyone has access to different support networks and finances, and we all have different responsibilities. However, what I will caveat that with is it's a really good tool to get started, to understand what it is that you want. And I think I've said this in another episode, but if, for instance, you are looking at, I don't know, a picture of somebody who owns a farm, and they're getting up at 4 a.m. to milk the cows and to feed the pigs, and you're thinking, that's just not for me, then you can kind of scroll on by, or, walk on by when you see that. But if you were somebody that looked at that account or that person or that page and thought, oh, I would love to be doing that. I absolutely love animals and I'm such an early bird and I dream of having a farm. Then don't get obsessing over what it is that that person has got, but take note of that feeling and that emotion because that is what's going to drive you to know that your values are probably around nature and animals and that kind of country lifestyle, and that is what you want to shape your life. That's the direction that actually really deep down you want to move things in. And that's great, because then you can start shaping your current behaviors and the way that you currently live your life around achieving the next step on the ladder to getting to that place. So comparison, whilst it can be the thief of joy, we've heard this time and time again, it can also be a really great vehicle to get to know what it is that you do want and what it is that does drive you. So the next time you're looking at someone's social media, or you hear of somebody that's done something and you think, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm never going to be able to, or you get that pang of jealousy of, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. Just know you can. You absolutely can. But nobody is going to come and do it for you. You've got to start and take that first step and take that action and do it for yourself. So I hope that has resonated. I hope that you've taken something from that. And I'm not ever here to be judgy, or, I mean, God, I absolutely couldn't be. I mean, there's so much of this that I speak about is stuff that I am currently going through or currently experiencing. It's things that are happening within my own life. So I am with you guys on all of this. Like, I'm not sat here saying, I've done this, I've achieved this, this is what you should do. Really, absolutely not. Nobody ever sees what goes on behind the scenes. And I think that's really important to take away as well. You can look at people, you can aspire to be like them, but just remember that social media is a highlight reel. There's so many instances that I have experienced this year of thinking that something is one way on the surface, and then getting to know it a little bit deeper, getting to have a little peek behind the curtain of that situation or that scenario, and actually realizing that what is put out on social media is not always as it seems. So do remember that, because again, you know, I've had comments myself, oh, I'd love to have a podcast. I'm like, okay, well, brilliant. Why don't you, look at topics that you'd want to discuss and have a look at getting a microphone and just get started. Oh, I couldn't. I just wouldn't know where to start. Well, no, neither did I. I really didn't. Like, not a clue. I listened to podcasts. That was about as much knowledge and experience as I had. But people will often say, oh, I couldn't. No, not me. Or no, or maybe one day, maybe in the future. Yeah, I'd love to one day. One day is going to be here before you know it. I'm 40 in January. I remember my mum being 40. I was 10 when my mum was 40. And I remember going to her birthday party. And now I'm nearly 40. And oh my gosh, the amount of stuff that I look back on and think, I wish I'd have done it sooner. Or I wish I'd have been brave enough or confident enough, or just realised that there was only me that could make that happen. I really, really do. So I'm doing it now. I'm doing it, and I'm grabbing it all by the balls, by the horns, whatever the phrase is. And you can too. You absolutely can. But you've got to do it yourself. You've got to think, what is it that I want my life to be? What is it that I value? And how am I living my life? And is it in alignment with those values? And if not, put those steps in place, put those habits in place to make it happen. Have a absolutely fantastic week. I am so, so grateful for every single one of you that continually tunes in and continually downloads Please do go and follow the show. That is the thing that means more. It's the thing that helps us with the algorithms and pushes the show out there. So please do give it a little follow, and I will see you all again next Sunday. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at HelloSundayPod, or you can email us on hellosundaypod@outlook.com. Have a great week.